Hello everyone and welcome to another Focus Mark 1 video. This time, as you can imagine by the title, I'm going to be looking at alloy wheels, wheel trims and maybe some tyre advice. It's one area that I haven't covered with Mark 1 Focuses and I'm not sure why, because it's a regular topic. People generally over the years have either changed their wheels for something more attractive in their eyes because, beauty is in the eye of the beholder and all that. Some people have completely modified their Focuses with custom wheels over the years. But obviously the element of my Focus Mark 1 group and my own beliefs say that you got to try and keep it original, or at least keep it OEM. And the Mark 1 Focus has an array of choices that are out there, and only but a few of them are quite widely available, to be honest. You have to be very careful about what you want on your car as opposed to what is available. The first obvious thing is that a Mark 1 Focus is a 4-stud car. Okay, you can really only have alloy wheels with 4 studs. Now there are, I know, adapters that can convert them to 5 studs. That would mean that you are applying a spacer to the hub with 5 studs to convert it from 4 to 5, obviously. That is doable, but is it really necessary? No, not really, because there are plenty of options out there for these cars. Even if you wanted to go custom, which I'm not really a fan of, there's plenty of 4-stud custom wheels out there. But this episode is about looking at what you would have originally got from the factory, because there were quite a few changes of wheel trims and alloy wheels down the years on what was available at the time. So we'll start off with the bottom, the CL. Well, from the factory, the CL would have originally have come out with these. Okay, that is the early CL and LX wheel trims, believe it or not. Both cars shared that wheel trim up to 2001 October when the car was facelifted. Okay, that was your standard wheel trim for the CL and LX, whatever engines, whatever choice. Well, obviously the CL was only available with the 1.4 petrol and the TDDI, and the LX you could have the TDCI a bit later on, but obviously before the facelift it wasn't really possible, so that's what you got. It's a sort of fake sort of style pattern for sort of how many spokes? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So about 8 spokes. You know, that was the give of the order of the day, with some fake wheel nuts in the middle. They're okay, and you can find these on eBay. This was a photograph taken from eBay, believe it or not. And I think they're about £25, maybe less, brand new. I would very much think if you have got an early LX, I don't know anyone within my group who has a CL, but if you do, and you want to repair the wheel trims because often they snap, that is a major thing. They snap around where the plastic brackets go that cling to the wheel, the claws, I should say. Because obviously it's only a metal sort of spring rim along the claws that just sort of it bends and catches into the wheel. They can break, they get brittle. I would recommend greasing those areas, and it isn't uncommon to cable tie them. I would recommend some sort of silver cable ties so they don't look a bit like standoffish against the wheel trim. It is a big issue, and I'm going to say this a few times in this episode. Wheel trims are going to be quite an issue in the future. I'm finding it out with my Mark III Fiesta that getting wheel trims is nigh on impossible, and the plastic wheel trims will be a problem in the future. Most likely, a lot of people would have converted to alloy wheels because it's just simpler. And apart from the CL, you had options on all the other cars. On a CL, it looks a bit out of place because you would have never had the option, I believe, for to have those wheel trims potentially. You did have the option of an alloy wheel for the CL models, but it was a very It was a very weird one. I'll show you a picture of it actually. So that is the 15-inch 6-spoke star alloy wheel, and I'm not joking. That would have been an option on the CL, an option. I don't like them. I've only ever seen one physically in existence, and that was on eBay. It was only one of them. To be honest, I think you might as well stick with steel wheels, the 14-inch Steelies with CL wheel trims for best practice, because yeah, that's going to be quite difficult to source in the future if you had a damaged wheel. I know there's a lot of ways you can straighten wheels out if it's buckled or anything. There's a lot of repairs you can do. I mean, these days we repair cracked alloys, you know, and no Mark 1 alloys have got a habit of cracking. So that's a good start actually, because that's quite a thing on a lot of cars. BMWs from this era, cracking alloys all the time. And people used to have to chuck them away because there was no way of repairing them back in the day. Now there is. There's a lot of ways. So it's not a big deal. But at the same time, I think trying to obtain them is almost impossible. So that would be quite interesting if someone's got them on their cars, because that's a very, very interesting design. Now, I will say that every single specification had the option of a full-sized a full-sized wheel in the boot. Now, that would be probably it would be a full-size steel wheel. I don't think it would be an alloy. I might be wrong about that, but usually every car as standard got a mini space saver wheel that we generally all have and probably have never used. Mine still got the original tyre on it because it's quite nice. I never intend to put it on unless in a complete emergency, and even then I think I'd rather just call the breakdown and get me to tow me home, in all fairness, or to a local tyre shop, because I wouldn't fancy my chances on it, but it's quite nice to not mess about with it at the same time. Most of them will be sitting in the boots, and well, some of them may be a bit rusty if you've got water going in the boot well, but generally they last quite a long time. And people don't change the tyre on the spare wheels. It's just a thing. We don't do that. It's just completely unnecessary for the amount of time that you may have a space saver on. But anyway, the next thing I'm going to say is obviously the CL, obviously like every other spec, you had the facelift in October 2001. And then that wheel trim became this. So they've changed it to this design, which I think is a bit more chunky. Now, this is the trim you would have got on any CL from 2001 October to the end of production. So the facelift. If you've got a facelift CL, that's what you should have had. It's a bit more chunkier, less spokes, still got the fake nuts, inverted commas, in the same sort of claw fixings that do tend to snap. Bit more chunkier, bit more, I'd say, cheaper. I'm just going to put these two on the screen together, actually, put that one back up. Comparing the pair of them, yeah, I just prefer the earlier one. I think the later one is just cheaper. It doesn't look as nice. Definitely. So if you've got a later car and you feel like you need a bit of a subtle modification, I'd very much think an early trim is much more desirable. But equally, again, these wheel trims, you can find these for about £25 brand new. So both pairs of CL wheel trims you can buy, no problem at all. But just grease them when you put them on those 14-inch steel wheels. On a CL, I think the recommendation from the factory was 185/65 tyres. Okay, obviously they're 14-inch, but 185/65, so quite a big wall. Now, I would recommend going for 185/60 because I think 65 is ridiculously overkill. Ridiculously. The height of the tyre wall is just ridiculous. I wouldn't even go from that. I would go for 60. If you can get a 185/60, it is possible to put a 190. 190/60s would do fine. They will fit the wheel as far as I'm aware. But 185s, well, yeah, that's quite skinny tyres, aren't they, for a car of this age and size, you know. It's not like a dainty old Fiesta Mark 3 or 4 or 5. It's a bigger car, you know, and it looks it. And they do look quite low. CLs look extremely, even with a tall tyre wall, they look extremely low on the road, which is quite interesting. But 14-inch Steelies, they just disappear in the arches, don't they? They just look like they're completely and utterly lost. But anyway, I'm going to skip over that. Now, I don't think, as far as I can see, I have a picture. There is a picture. I do apologise, I forgot to add that picture in. I couldn't get a UK car for some reason with them alloys, but I found this one on Google, so you can see how that looks. Now I'm just going to show you the early version. You see what I mean? I prefer the early version personally to the later wheel trim because it just looks chunky and cheaper and something you'd probably buy at Alfred's. So we'll gloss over that and move on to the next one. And that is the LX. So for the LX, like I explained, up to 2000, well, I'd say for the LX, and this is where it gets a bit complicated, but pretty much if you bought an LX, you would have had the same wheel trims as a CL before the facelift, okay? In 2001, when the facelift took place, you got these. Yeah, these are what were, and I'm going to come to explain this when we get to the gear, they were the early gear alloys. They were the earlier gear alloys, okay? There were two types that you could get on early gears. It's a bit technical to explain this, and I'll come to the gears in a second. But as far as for the LX, you would have got these after 2001 on the facelift, okay? They were the standard fitment. They are 15-inch 8x2 spoke alloy wheels, okay? But there was a catch. To get this alloy wheel after 2001 October as standard, you had to buy the 1.6 or the diesel TDCI. If you bought an LX with the 1.4 Sigma engine, which is possible, but very, very few survive. Very few, but there are survivors out there. You got this, which was completely different and basically denoted you've got an LX, but you couldn't afford the bigger engine, essentially. And you had the poverty spec 1.4 petrol engine. I did find a picture of one here, and it's here. Yeah, so this is so in that picture is a one, unless those wheels have been taken off, those trims have come off another car and put on this. In that particular example, that might have been modified, because as far as I'm concerned with the CLs, if you bought if you wanted a CL estate, which was available on the CL, the estate version was available as a CL, but they're very rare, you had to have the 1.6. So I've got a feeling that the car we're looking at in that picture is a 1.6, but it ended up with these wheels. So again, as I say, Mark 1 wheel trims and alloys are being mixed up, because the thing over the past few years, and I've seen this, is when people want to change their tyres, they actually find it's cheaper to buy the wheels with good tyres. And I'm thinking, they end up buying ridiculous like combinations. Good example, Nick, you're watching this. Nick's Jazabella is wearing Z-Tech alloys, but it's a gear. Now, I presume, Nick, you bought the Z-Tech wheels because they came with good tyres, or maybe the gear wheels weren't in great condition and the tyres are completely shot. That's a typical thing over the last sort of 5 or 6 years, because this car's been pure Bangonomics, and the idea is that you don't really go and fork out a fortune for new tyres. You actually find it's been cheaper over the years to buy different wheels with good sets of tyres. So it's a mix and match exercise. This one is a curious one though. That must be a 1.6 to be an estate though. You didn't get the 1.4 on an estate. So for some reason that's ended up with them. But generically, if you bought an LX after 2001 October with the 1.4, you got them wheel trims. If you got the 1.6 or above, generally 1.6 or the TDCI, you got the LX alloys that you see in this picture. Okay, so I think that's very clear. And that's the way the LX stayed to the end of production as well. Okay, right, next one. And the next one we come to is the easiest to talk about, the Zetec. I mean, goodness me. If there's one specification that didn't change, it's the Zetec. From the moment they came out in September 1998 to the moment they finished in, well, it would have been, the last registration's May, June, I was about to say September 2005, May, June 2005. Would have been the last registrations, but there would have been some late registrations even after that. The Zetec specification, you got the 15-inch Zetec alloys. Lovely, aren't they? Absolutely smashing. 5x2 spoke alloy wheels. Most likely, you would fit them with a 195/60 is specified from the factory. The owner's manual will say you've got two choices, and I agree with this, because the other choice is 195/55. I would go for 55 because 60 is too tall. I've seen Zetec wheels sitting on 195/60s and they look too tall. It makes the car look like it's on stilts. So if you can, 195/55 is my recommendation for Zetec alloys. So I know a lot of you are going to pay attention to that. So please seek them out. They are available, and I don't think they're any more expensive as tyres than 195/60s. And that is generically the way it stayed. That is the design. That is the alloy design through production. But there was a twist, and the twist is the wheels that my car fitted with. And I thought it was a really nice thing to have my car subtly modified with, well, it was an opportunity I couldn't miss. The wheels in question are these 16-inch alloy wheels. They are exactly identical to the 15-inch, except they're 16, they're just slightly an inch more in diameter. But also, if you look at the pair of them carefully, there's a rim on the 15-inch, there's a rim around the outside. That's usually where garages can actually apply a wheel weight and just the clip-on wheel weights. You've got the sticky ones and you've got the clip ones. With the 15-inch, garages will usually clip a wheel weight onto the end. This wasn't why there's a rim there by any chance, but that's what garages do. Whereas on my 16-inch alloy, they're going to have to use sticky weights. And these are very sought after, the 16-inch. If you see on the rim, it's smooth and it sits much more nicely in the wheel arches. You will usually have them with 205/50 tyres. You must buy 205/50 tyres with these 16s. If you buy 55s, they look stupidly tall, and I'll tell you why. Because 205/55s are more widely available, used on more cars, and therefore cheaper. So that's what people do. When I bought a lovely set of these that are on my car today, and I couldn't turn it down. It was £60, and this was 2.5 years ago. £60, just before I started YouTube anyway. £60 for 4 of them. Just need the tyres replacing, and the centre caps were buggered. But that's fine, because these are the centre caps for them, and these centre caps will fit the 15 and the 16s. They're cheap, they're ready available, and I've got plenty of them hoarded away, because I've got a feeling that those centre caps are going to be extremely desirable in the future. So if you've got your wits about you, okay, if you've got a Zetec, go on eBay and buy the centre caps. You must do that, because I've got 5 or 6, because the 4 in my car are absolutely astonishingly, you know, they're brand new. And I think they will remain pretty brand new with the mileage of the car for 10-15 years at least. But I've got some spares in my hoard, and knowing my experience with wheel trims, I think if you've got a MK1 Focus that uses the wheel trims off the CL and LX especially, and the early gear models, I'll explain that in a second. If you've got them 3 cars that use wheel trims, I would stockpile some wheel trims. I really would. I wouldn't recommend hoarding because I don't. Well, I say I've got 6. That's not really a hoard. That's a small sort of backup collection from my own car. But hoarding, there's no point in it unless you've got the space and you can afford to spend that much money in one go. Because if you're talking £25 for a brand new wheel trim for a CLX, you're talking £100. Can you justify that money now? I mean, to be fair, it's a good choice and it's a no-brainer in some respects. But these are as I say, those are the centre caps, and they will fit both. And actually, my wheels didn't need refurbing at all. They are very stylish, and I will tell you now, these 16-inch alloy wheels were only fitted as standard if you bought a Zetec with the 2-litre Zetec engine. Sometimes they are referred to as a Zetec ESP because you also got an electronic stability program package as well with traction control and ABS, I suspect. You have got quite a nice little combination there. They were only sold in 3 doors as well, okay? So I think one of the most desirable Focuses in the future will be the 2-litre ESP 3-door with the 16-inch. Absolutely, as a Zetec spec. That is exactly going to be one of the most desirable Mark 1s. And as far as I'm concerned, I don't think there's many. And if there is, sadly, they're mostly going to the breakers because people don't know what they're worth, sadly. Most of them have been butchered for their wheels, so guilty of that, but they were available and I had to take them. Today, you'd be lucky to get one of them wheels. The 15-inch alloys can go for, very good prices. They're the most common alloy wheel for Mark 1, so you will not have to worry. The LX alloys as well, after 2001, they are common as muck, okay? They're everywhere, so you will not have problems finding them. The 16-inch, well, put it this way, you'll never be able to get a set for 60 quid again. And even when I bought them, they were cheaper than what they should have been. They should have been about 100 or so at the time. Now there's a massive demand for them, and I would recommend it as a subtle modification if you want to make the Mark 1 look a little bit nice and stand nicer, if you've got a Zetec, but they are a premium. And usually you will see sets of 4 of them with rubbish tyres and no centre caps for about 50 quid, maybe 60 quid a corner. If they come with centre caps, that's a bonus. If they come with tyres, it'd be even more than that. You could be talking 80 to 90 pounds a corner. So yes, they are not cheap. So word of warning. Anyway, that's the way it stood for the whole production. Now we're going to move on to the gear, and this is where it gets a bit funny again. I will say one thing. When the Mark 1 was launched in 1998, the only spec that you could buy with alloy wheels as standard was the Zetec. Even the gear did not get alloy wheels. That was left to the Zetec being the sort of everyday man's sports version, and I think that's my interpretation of the Zetec trim. It's the everyman's sports spec. So, from the start, the gear got these. Now, some of you will look at that and think, oh, hold on, that's the flight trim. Well, you are correct, but that was later on. So, the early gears from the get-go had them. And they would have come as potentially 14 or 15 inch. Now there's 2 sizes of trim. Now for the life of me, I can't remember which size goes with which, but I'm pretty sure the gears would have been launched with a 15-inch wheel trim. That might be incorrect because you can get that trim in both 14 and 15 inch. I do know that the flights are 15 inch. It's as simple as that. So that was the early wheel trim you'd have gotten a gear. Really nice and stylish with the centre cap that looks a little bit more embedded. It's sort of a deep dish centre cap that's attached to the trim. It's part of the trim, but it looks extremely stylish, and I definitely want a gear for them wheel trims. They're very stylish. Today they retail for the usual price around £25 if you want a genuine one. There are some aftermarket manufacturers that I haven't mentioned before. The CL, LX wheel trims and the gear wheel trims, I think you can all get as aftermarket. There are some aftermarket manufacturers who do make them, but whether they're as good as the originals, probably not. They're probably a bit more brittle, a bit more cheap on the plastic, which is why they're cheaper. But then we know Ford likes to charge good prices for their genuine parts. So two ways really, but it's worth a punt. But these were very stylish. Now, at some point around the millennium, I'm not quite sure when, those wheel trims were ditched in favour of these. Oh yes, LX alloys. No. Well, what was to become LX alloys, I should say. They first appeared on the Focus Millennium. The Ford Focus Millennium was the first car to use those gear alloys. Now, those wheel trims had obviously been ditched around the millennium, around that time. And from then on, gears around 2000, 2001 up to the facelift would have LX, those what people would know as LX alloys, but then it was 8x2 spoke wheels. So these were the new stylish gear wheels, because at that time, 2000, 2001, if you remember what I said earlier, the LX, well, they had wheel trims. Yeah. So what happened in the facelift is the LX gained the gears wheel trims that you see there, and the gear, well, they gained a completely different design, which is here. That's the design. And if I just get a picture up on the screen, yep, they are the gear wheels sitting. They are the new gear alloys, I should say. They are 12 spoke, quite stylish, but not probably my favourite one. I don't know why, but they just don't look as good as what came after these. So you would have got these on a facelifted gear from October 2001. At some point in early 2003, as far as the brochures are concerned, they switched from that alloy wheel to this. Now that's a lot better in my opinion. I think these they suit the car so much better. They're fantastic. And I think that those gear alloys were definitely designed in mind, knowing that the Mark II was not far off. It was in the pipeline. And Ford wanted to move some of their wheel designs on a bit. And that wheel design is very similar to what you would have got on the gear Mark II Focuses. So they were definitely moving on with the times and trying to make their car a little bit more modern. And I would say the later gear alloys are the most stylish and well-suited design, and smart design, I should say, on a Mark 1 Focus. I really do like them. They stand out nicely. They sit nice in the arches. They just look smart. They go with the colour coordination that you got on the gear. They do require a small centre cap, I should say. That is more of an insert than anything. You can get them anywhere. I think you can get them online, and you can get them on eBay. There is a specific parts number for the centre cap, but they don't usually get tarnished that much. Now that is your specifications, and so I hope that I've made it very, very clear about the transition. The only transition that I'm a bit blurry on is where the original gear wheel trims became, well, they ditched them and then it became what were to be known as the LX alloys around 2000. So interesting. But the Millennium was the first special edition the UK received, and the one that got the gear wheel trims. Now, whether that wheel trim had appeared before the Millennium came out, it's possible, but equally it might not be. It might have been the alloy that started with the Millennium, and they thought, well, we've designed this alloy for the Millennium. That looks rather good. Shall we just keep it as the standard gear alloy and ditch the wheel trims? That might have been the intention, because they've spent all this money like paying the manufacturers to make a new casting, a new design. So of course you're going to use it, aren't you? It's not going to be a one-off. So that's where we are with the main specifications. Obviously, ST170, these are the alloys. You got them as standard. Yep, they are very much similar to OZ alloys. They're 17-inch, 15 spoke, I believe, and they come with these detachable center caps. I'll show you in the picture here. Yep, they are renowned for not sitting properly. Those center caps, for whatever reason, never sat properly. It was definitely a manufacturing defect. There was some quality control issues. And as the clips get older, they get worse and they just don't sit flush, and you need new ones. And those center caps, unfortunately, are £25. You'd be lucky to get them for cheaper than that. So sadly, that is why many of them actually don't have them, and they have some aftermarket ones. So quite an interesting one, that. But yeah, I think there's only one thing I actually missed out from all of that. I will cover this. The center caps. Now, a few of the alloy wheels use center caps. So I believe that the early gear alloys that we see here, which became the LX, they have a silver chrome sort of finish alloy style center cap. It's a very small one. It's in the picture here. They are very cheap and obtainable, and they can get tarnished quite easy, so that's something to consider. There is a couple of alloys that use very specific trim caps. I'll go through that in a second. It is worth noting that most cars got 15-inch wheels. So whether it was the gear trim, the gear alloys, the Z-Tech alloys, it's always 195/60 really from the factory. But you can fit 195/55s, and that's preferable because, as I say, the tyre height, etc. The only last thing I forgot to mention, ST170 alloys, they corrode quite badly. For some reason, the manufacturer of that wheel certainly did not manufacture the other wheels. It could be OZ themselves, but I doubt it. It could have just been a cheap copy, and the manufacturer was a cheap manufacturer, and they corrode quite badly around the spokes. And it's very common for you to have to get them refurbed properly if you want them to last. I did with mine when I had mine, and I had them painted in diamond white. So and that hopefully that set of alloys is on an LX today. I hope the owner still got the car because he put them straight on, and that was a few years ago now. So just something to be aware of ST170 alloys. They're not as common as they were. You couldn't give them away a few years ago. Now you can't find them, very surprisingly. When they do come up, they need refurbing. Usually a set of 4 with rubbish tyres, no centre caps or broken centre caps, probably about £100. So you're looking at a refurb job, which might cost you about £50 a wheel, depending on what your local refurber is like. Mine is pretty good. I pay £40 a wheel with the tyre, so they balance the tyre, put a new tyre valve on, etc. But most places £50–60 as usual, especially, and that's just refurbing it. If there's buckles, it'll be more of a repair. So you're looking at, £240, and then the centre caps on top of it. If you want the centre caps, yeah, it's another £100. So we're looking at 340 odd. So again, for a whole set of ST170 alloys in perfect nick, forget the tyres, you're looking at £400. And then the tyres on top of that's probably 600. This is where it does kind of cycle a little bit. And I will say the Z-Tech 16-inch alloys, exactly the same problem. They're very expensive to buy. Sometimes they need refurbing. Not always. They don't corrode like the ST170 alloys. Most of them are pretty good. Maybe some light scratches here and there. Centre caps are quite cheap. Tyres, not cheap. Tyres are about £80 a corner. So you can see where this could spiral out of control. But anyway, special limited editions. Now, we talked about the Millennium. That had the early style gear alloys, possibly the first model to use that style of alloy, and then it was used for the rest of the pre-facelift's life until 2001 October, where it was changed again. But for the other special limited editions, you got this. Yeah. It's not to everyone's taste. Now, apparently, according to the brochure, that particular alloy is a 3x2 spoke alloy wheel. I say, no, it isn't. It's 6. No, it's not. If you look carefully, the spokes are actually in pairs, and they're very close together. They're closer together and spaced very weirdly. So you've got two, and another two. So three sets of two, essentially, with a centre cap. And I have got the centre cap here. They're quite cheap as well. But yeah, these were fitted to many editions, namely the black, your silver, your chick, your Ellie, your ink, quite a few of them. That's most of them that I've covered already. And they're not the most stylish. I think for a special limited edition, they could have done a lot better than that. Quite a few people they're just not worth it. They're very cheap to obtain. They're still widely available, even though the limited edition models means they're quite limited. They're not like as common as Z-Tech alloys, obviously, but not many people want them. Dave, you're restoring your Ford Focus Silver, as you've seen in the videos, and Dave is acquiring some genuine special limited edition alloys that you see here. And it's going to look fantastic once they're refurbed and new centre caps. They're going to look great. Again, they use the standard 195/60. Go for 195/55s again, guys. But on the special limited edition, that's what you got, and keep to it. But I wouldn't blame you if you didn't want them on the car, because they're not the most appealing. But I think if you had it refurbed in, let's say, if you had a refurb in a slightly sparkly silver colour, so a very similar silver but a sort of sparkle to it, an extra gleam, that would make them look quite nice, I think. It's worth thinking about. Anyway, the next one is, you've got a couple of run-out models. So we've got the Edge for a start. So the Edge model, as you can see here, and there is one particular car I've forgotten about, and I will come to that in a second. Yeah, the Edge model, as you can see here, couldn't get pictures of them. Couldn't find any actual pictures of the wheel separately this time, because I couldn't find any for sale. They will come up for sale because there's plenty of Edge models around. It's a weird, it's quite a basic design, really, the Edge design. And it's more of an inspiration, I think, from the MP3 17-inch wheels. Now, these wheels, they are quite nice. They're not to everyone's taste, but being 15-inch, they're okay. They're decent wheels. I can understand why some people have gone and spent quite a bit of money on them, but they're only 15. They've got quite a bit of alloy sort of surface area to them, and I definitely think they were an inspiration from the MP3 alloys that I should have actually covered before this. But nevertheless, they're very, very easy to get. Same tyres, 195/55s again, guys. Same thing. And the centre caps, I believe, are these centre caps again. Very easy to get hold of. To fit these centre caps, by the way, they should click in. If they can't, heat the tabs up with a heat gun to soften them up, bend them back a bit, just a little bit, and then push it into place. And then by the time you've pushed it in, the plastic would have gone hard again and cold, and it will stick there. It won't move. It's not going to fall out, is it? And then the other run-out model was the Flight. Now, as I said earlier, they brought back some wheel trims that died out, well, around the millennium. The gear wheel trims. Yes, these. They made a return. Now, I believe that these are also 15 inches. I've got a feeling they could be 14. I'm not sure which size of wheel the Flight used, but I'm pretty sure it'd be 15. So again, they reused a load of probably old stock. They probably realised that after they ditched the wheel trims for the alloys on the around the time of the millennium on the gear models, that they had so much excess stock that they needed to get rid of it. So why not chuck them on another run-out model? Obviously, the Edge was based on the Z-Tech, and the Flight is based on the LX. So they chucked it on, and they look very stylish, and it makes a really stylish car, and they do look nice. And I'm glad, because they are stylish. I think they're the nicest wheel trims that I would have on a Mark 1. So that's that. But then you've got the MP3. Oh, yes, how can I forget? I've left the MP3 for a couple of reasons. Namely, I think I think the MP3 for me, nice special edition, extremely rare now. There's only about 100 of them as far as I'm aware within the UK, because most of them have been butchered for the wheels. And like, oh, it's got some rust and scabs. Tell you what, can I have the wheels? Yeah, sure. And they've always gone for good money, which is why I'm afraid many of them have gone to the scrapper because of this problem. And MP3 alloys, even for one of them, will probably cost you £100. They're the most expensive alloy for a Mark 1 Focus. I'm not quite sure why, because I never thought that they suited a Mark 1. But as a special one-off limited edition, fair enough. I can understand why they did it. It was never fitted to any other Mark 1 Focus. Obviously, you can see the inspiration behind the Edge alloys. Obviously, they were very similar, but less spokes. This was a 7-spoke, so I should say. A 7-spoke alloy wheel. With a lot of surface area, again, more like fan blades than anything. There's very little, there's more metal than gaps in those wheels. So quite an interesting design, quite desirable. And yeah, they are 17-inch. The only wheels on a Focus to be 17-inch as standard. Oh, apart from obviously the ST170 alloys, I'm forgetting them. Excuse me on that one. They fill the arches quite nicely. They will sit on 215/45 low profile tyres. Okay, 215/45. You can get them on 215/40s, but well, it's not ideal. For me, 215/40s are a bit of a funny one. They're just too thin for me. You're going to have to go for 45s. The same advice is for ST170 alloys. 215/45s, please. Not 40s. It's just stupid. 50s are too big. 40s are just paper. You might as well just have paper as your wheels, and your ride comfort is going to be really dreadful. So please, a compromise of 215/45s, please. That is the recommendation, and I think that is what was specified from the factory. Again, they have the usual centre caps that I've explained earlier that you can obtain quite easily, but that's not your problem. The tyres are not as expensive as 205/50s on the 16s, I can tell you that. It's ridiculous. But still, getting the wheels is a difficult one. And usually when somebody is selling MP3 alloys, they usually are very scratched up. As I say, there's a lot of surface area, so that's a lot of area to get scratched up, and they will come with lots of scratches. So getting a refurb is a must. So you're going to have to budget a lot of money if you want these on your Focus. Personally, I'd forget about it. And keep it relatively standard. Unless you have an MP3, don't bother. Unless you've actually got them. If you are lucky enough to have had them fitted to your car by some previous owner, and they didn't know, or they did know, or whatever, then you're in a good place. But equally, if you wanted to move them on and sell them, you could buy a completely, genuine original set of correct trims for your wheels for your car, and still basically be able to get brand new tyres and a refurb, because the MP3 alloys will pay for that. They'll pay for that. I mean, if you think 100 quid a corner, maybe 90 at a put, maybe 90 if you wanted to sell them quickly, or maybe 80, you're talking 360 to 400 pounds. Well, that will cost, that will be probably enough to pay for some Zetec alloys or gear alloys or whatever car it is, it's what it's supposed to be anyway, enough to refurb those wheels and tyres. There'll be enough all in one. Maybe not all 4 tyres, but still, it's worth thinking about. So I'm going to leave that here. There are Focuses that I am very well aware about. Obviously the 130, the 190, the T230, the T250, etc. These cars that were based on Zetec's, originally unregistered as Zetec's, were very much not the standard Focus by a long shot. They carry their own wheels. And there's a few odd oddities, customized wheels. There was all sorts of accessories you could buy for Mark 1 Focus that even I'm not aware about. As much as that Ford used to sell a lot of accessories like the versatility pack. I've recently seen a Mark 1 with that lovely versatility package where the passenger front seat folds completely flat and you've got a laptop table on the back side. Absolute, I'd buy the car for that alone because they're that rare. And we know there are cars that have got some real customized wheels, but unfortunately, because of the lack of knowledge in this area, and I can't really add to this, many people will probably just assume it's been modified with a custom wheel, and they wouldn't actually recognize that that is actually a genuine Ford accessory alloy wheel that you wouldn't have got other than with a dealer fitted option, and it was fitted to the car brand new. Nobody would know. Nobody would know unless you've got paperwork to prove that. Nobody would know. So yeah, the complicated case of alloy wheels on Mark 1s and wheel trims. So I hope I've explained everything. Please feel free if I've got anything wrong to put it in the comments, but I'm pretty sure that everything is pretty correct. Anyway, I'm going to leave this here and the complicated world of Mark 1 Focuses and their wheels. I hope you've learned something good and got some ideal buying advice on what prices they can go for, things that you need to watch out for, tyres. Anyway, you take care, guys. I will see you in another episode of Very Much Usefulness. See ya.